He strutted into the courtroom like he owned the building, flashing his Rolex and designer suit, with his young mistress clinging to his arm like a trophy. This was Vincent Blackstone, real estate mogul worth $50 million, and he was here to finalize what he thought would be the easiest divorce of the century. He expected his pregnant wife Sarah to sign whatever papers his army of lawyers put in front of her, take her measly settlement, and disappear forever. What he didn't expect was for the judge to lean forward with a chilling smile and say 5 words that would destroy his entire world. "Mrs. Blackstone, play the video." Before we dive into this absolutely explosive story of justice served ice cold, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, what you're about to witness is the most satisfying courtroom destruction you've ever seen. And stick around until the very end, because the final twist will leave you speechless. The fluorescent lights of Courtroom 7A buzzed overhead like angry insects, casting harsh shadows across the polished wood and faded beige walls. It was a Thursday morning in downtown Chicago, and the air was thick with the tension of lives being legally dismantled. This was where marriages came to die, where love was reduced to spreadsheets and asset divisions, where the messy reality of human relationships met the cold machinery of the law. Vincent Blackstone sat at the defendant's table like a king holding court. At 45, he was still handsome in that silver fox way that money could preserve. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled hair with just enough gray at the temples to suggest wisdom, and eyes that sparkled with the confidence of a man who had never met a problem he couldn't buy his way out of. His charcoal Armani suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and his Italian leather shoes gleamed under the courtroom lights. But the most audacious display of his arrogance wasn't his expensive clothes or his smugly confident posture. It was the woman sitting directly behind him in the gallery's front row. Amber Sinclair was everything Sarah Blackstone wasn't, or at least everything Vincent thought Sarah should have been. 28 years old, blonde, with the kind of Instagram-ready beauty that came from expensive procedures and a personal trainer. She wore a tight red dress that screamed for attention and scrolled through her phone with the bored expression of someone who viewed this legal proceeding as nothing more than an inconvenient delay before her shopping trip. Her presence was a calculated insult, a final twist of the knife directed at the woman sitting 30 feet away. That woman was Sarah Blackstone, and from a distance, you might have mistaken her stillness for defeat. She sat at the plaintiff's table with her hands folded protectively over her 7-month pregnant belly, wearing a simple black dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and modest. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and though there were shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and emotional devastation, her gaze was steady and focused. She wasn't looking at Vincent. She wasn't looking at Amber. She was looking at the empty judge's bench with the expression of someone who had been planning for this moment for months. Beside her sat Margaret Chen, a family law attorney with a reputation for being as sharp as a surgical scalpel and twice as precise. Where Vincent's lawyer looked like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine, Margaret was all business. Conservative suit, minimal jewelry, and a briefcase that contained what Sarah hoped would be Vincent's complete destruction. The backstory that set everything in motion. To understand the depths of Vincent's betrayal, you had to go back 18 months to when Sarah thought she had the perfect marriage. Vincent Blackstone had built his fortune from nothing, starting with a single run-down apartment building and growing it into Blackstone Properties, a real estate empire worth $50 million. He was charming, ambitious, and when he'd proposed to Sarah 5 years earlier, she thought she was the luckiest woman alive. Sarah had been a successful interior designer with her own boutique firm when they met. She was the one who had designed the lobbies for Vincent's first 3 luxury buildings, creating the elegant, sophisticated spaces that helped him attract high-end tenants. Her artistic vision had been crucial to establishing Blackstone Properties' reputation for luxury and style. But Vincent had convinced her to give up her business after their wedding. "Why work so hard when you don't need to?" he'd said, stroking her hair as they lay in bed in their penthouse apartment. "I want to take care of you. Let me be the provider." It had seemed romantic at the time. Sarah had sold her firm, and settled into the role of the perfect wife, hosting dinner parties for Vincent's business associates, managing their household, supporting his career from behind the scenes. She'd thought they were building a life together. The cracks started showing about 2 years ago. Vincent began working later, taking more business trips, becoming distant and irritable at home. When Sarah suggested they start trying for a baby, he'd been less than enthusiastic. "Maybe later," he'd say. "I'm focused on expanding into the California market right now." Then came Amber Sinclair, Vincent's new marketing consultant. She was young, ambitious, and according to Vincent, absolutely essential to his business's social media presence. Sarah had tried to be understanding when Vincent started mentioning Amber more and more in their dinner conversations. She'd even been gracious when Vincent insisted on bringing Amber to company events. "She's part of the team," he'd explained when Sarah expressed discomfort. "Her Instagram influence is helping us reach younger renters." The truth, of course, was far more sordid. Vincent hadn't just hired Amber for her marketing skills, he'd hired her to be his mistress. The affair had been going on for over a year, conducted in penthouse hotel suites and luxury vacation rentals, all paid for with money from the business that Sarah had helped build. Sarah had suspected for months, but the confirmation came in the most brutal way possible. She'd been going through Vincent's credit card statements, something she'd started doing when she noticed unusual charges, and found receipts for a weekend at the Four Seasons that she definitely hadn't been invited to. When she'd confronted Vincent, he hadn't even bothered to deny it. "It's not personal, Sarah," he'd said, his voice cold and businesslike. "We've grown apart. Amber and I have a connection, an energy that you and I just don't have anymore." That had been 6 months ago. 3 months later, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The pregnancy that changed everything. When Sarah had told Vincent about the baby, she'd hoped it might change things. Maybe becoming a father would remind him of what they'd built together, what they could still be as a family. Instead, Vincent had accused her of trying to trap him. "This is convenient timing," he'd sneered, pacing around their living room like a caged animal. "Just when I'm trying to move on with my life, suddenly you're pregnant? How do I even know it's mine?" The accusation had been like a physical slap. They'd been married for 5 years, and despite their problems, Sarah had never been unfaithful. The pregnancy had been as much a surprise to her as it was to him. Vincent had moved out that week, taking up residence in a luxury apartment downtown with Amber. He'd immediately filed for divorce, offering Sarah what he called a generous settlement, the house in the suburbs, which carried a hefty mortgage, $200,000 in cash, and $2,000 a month in child support. For a man worth $50 million, it was insulting. But Vincent had made a crucial mistake. In his arrogance and his hurry to start his new life with Amber, he'd underestimated his wife. He'd seen her as the quiet, supportive woman who'd given up her career for their marriage, and he'd assumed she would take whatever he offered and disappear quietly. He had no idea that Sarah had been documenting everything. The courtroom drama begins. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. Judge Morrison entered the courtroom with the no-nonsense bearing of someone who had seen every variety of human selfishness and stupidity that divorce proceedings could produce. She was in her late 50s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She settled into her chair and surveyed the courtroom with the expression of a general preparing for battle. "Please be seated. We're here today for the matter of Blackstone versus Blackstone, case number 2024-DR-7891. This is the final hearing for dissolution of marriage. Mr. Davidson, you may begin." Thomas Davidson, Vincent's attorney, rose with the kind of theatrical flourish that suggested he charged by the dramatic gesture. He was exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer who specialized in protecting the assets of wealthy men. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, and a smile that never reached his eyes. "Your Honor, this should be a straightforward matter. My client, Mr. Vincent Blackstone, has been more than generous in his settlement offer. He's offering Mrs. Blackstone the marital home, valued at $800,000, plus $200,000 in cash and ongoing child support of $2,000 per month." He paused, as if expecting applause for Vincent's magnanimity. Mr. Blackstone built his business empire through his own hard work and vision. While we acknowledge Mrs. Blackstone's contributions as a supportive spouse, she was not an active partner in the business operations. The settlement offer represents more than fair compensation for her role in the marriage. Davidson turned slightly toward Sarah, his voice taking on a tone of condescending sympathy. Furthermore, Your Honor, we must address the timing of Mrs. Blackstone's pregnancy. My client had already moved out of the marital home and filed separation papers when this pregnancy allegedly occurred. While Mr. Blackstone is prepared to provide support for the child if paternity is established, he questions whether he is, in fact, the father. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Sarah's hand tightened protectively over her belly, but she didn't flinch. She'd known this accusation was coming. Margaret Chen stood up with the fluid grace of a predator. Your Honor, Mr. Davidson's characterization is not only offensive, it's factually incorrect on multiple levels. Judge Morrison looked at Margaret with interest. Ms. Chen, what is your client's position? Our position, Your Honor, is that Mr. Davidson's settlement offer is not generous. It's insulting. It represents less than 2% of Mr. Blackstone's verified net worth, a net worth that was built with my client's direct and substantial contributions. Margaret walked closer to the judge's bench. Mrs. Blackstone wasn't just a supportive spouse, Your Honor. She was the interior designer who created the signature look for Blackstone Properties' first luxury buildings. Her artistic vision was instrumental in establishing the company's brand and attracting high-end tenants. She gave up her own successful design firm at Mr. Blackstone's request to support his business full-time. She turned back toward Vincent, who was beginning to look less confident. Furthermore, the accusation regarding paternity is both false and cruel. We have extensive evidence that Mr. and Mrs. Blackstone were actively trying to conceive during the time period when this child was conceived. Mr. Blackstone's claim of non-paternity is a calculated lie designed to avoid his financial and moral obligations. Davidson jumped to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making accusations without evidence. Margaret smiled, and something about that smile made Vincent's stomach clench with dread. Actually, Mr. Davidson, we have quite a bit of evidence. Your Honor, we'd like to present several pieces of documentation to the court. Proceed, Ms. Chen. Margaret returned to her table and picked up a thick file. First, we have text messages between Mr. and Mrs. Blackstone from the period in question, clearly showing that Mr. Blackstone was actively participating in fertility planning. He was tracking my client's ovulation cycle and suggesting optimal timing for conception. She handed copies to the judge and to Davidson, who was beginning to look distinctly uncomfortable. Second, we have credit card receipts showing that Mr. Blackstone purchased prenatal vitamins, pregnancy books, and even a bassinet during the early stages of my client's pregnancy, before he apparently decided to deny paternity. Vincent's face was turning red. These were details he'd forgotten about. Evidence of his initial excitement about becoming a father before his relationship with Amber had made the pregnancy inconvenient. Most importantly, Margaret continued, we have medical records showing that Mr. and Mrs. Blackstone attended a fertility consultation together just 2 months before the pregnancy occurred. Mr. Blackstone was an active and enthusiastic participant in these appointments. She turned to face Vincent directly. Your Honor, Mr. Blackstone isn't questioning paternity because he has genuine doubts. He's denying his own child because it doesn't fit with the narrative he's created about his new life with his mistress. The courtroom erupted. Davidson was on his feet objecting. Vincent was whispering furiously to his lawyer, and Amber was shifting uncomfortably in her seat, suddenly aware that all eyes were on her. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Davidson, your client's personal life is relevant to these proceedings insofar as it affects the custody and support of the child in question. She looked down at the documents Margaret had provided, her expression growing increasingly stern. Ms. Chen, this evidence appears to directly contradict your opponent's claims about the timing and circumstances of the pregnancy. It does indeed, Your Honor. But we have something even more compelling to present to the court. Margaret walked back to her table and picked up a tablet. Your Honor, we have video evidence that we believe will resolve any remaining questions about Mr. Blackstone's credibility and his fitness as a father. The video that changed everything. The words video evidence hit the courtroom like a thunderbolt. Vincent went pale, his confident demeanor evaporating instantly. He grabbed Davidson's arm and whispered something urgent, but his lawyer looked just as shocked. "Your Honor," Davidson stammered, "we object to the introduction of any video evidence without proper foundation. We don't know what this alleged video contains or how it was obtained." Judge Morrison looked at Margaret. "Ms. Chen, please explain the nature of this evidence." Margaret's voice was calm and professional, but there was an underlying steel that made everyone in the courtroom lean forward. "Your Honor, this video was recorded by Mrs. Blackstone using her cell phone approximately 6 weeks ago. She was in her own home, the marital home that she continues to reside in. When Mr. Blackstone arrived unexpectedly, she paused, letting the tension build. Mr. Blackstone was intoxicated and became verbally aggressive when Mrs. Blackstone questioned him about his relationship with Ms. Sinclair. The video captures Mr. Blackstone making several damaging admissions about his infidelity, his business practices, and his intentions regarding the divorce and child support. Vincent was shaking his head frantically, whispering, "No, no, no," under his breath. "Furthermore," Margaret continued, "Mrs. Sinclair was present during this incident and can be seen and heard on the video as well. The recording was made in Mrs. Blackstone's own home, so there are no privacy or consent issues." Judge Morrison considered this. "I'll allow the evidence. Please proceed, Ms. Chen." Margaret set up the tablet on a stand where everyone in the courtroom could see it. "Your Honor, I should warn you that the language in this video is quite explicit and the content is disturbing. Mr. Blackstone's behavior is both threatening and deeply inappropriate." She pressed play. The video began with shaky footage of Sarah's living room. The camera showed Vincent stumbling through the front door, clearly drunk, with Amber close behind him. Vincent was wearing an expensive suit, but it was wrinkled and his tie was loose. Amber was in a tight dress and high heels, looking around the house with obvious disdain. "Vincent, what are you doing here?" Sarah's voice came from behind the camera, shaky but determined. "You moved out. You can't just show up whenever you want." Vincent laughed, an ugly slurred sound. "It's still my house, sweetheart. My name's on the deed. I can come and go as I please." "We need to get some of my jewelry," Amber said, her voice sharp and entitled. "The stuff I left in the bedroom." The camera swung slightly, catching Amber's face clearly. She looked directly at the phone and smirked. "Still recording everything, Sarah?" "That's so pathetic." "Amber, please," Sarah's voice said. "This doesn't involve you." Vincent stepped closer to the camera, his face filling the frame. His eyes were bloodshot and his expression was cruel. "Actually, it involves her plenty, because she's going to be my wife soon, and this is going to be our house." He gestured around the room. "You think you're going to get half of everything? You think some judge is going to feel sorry for you because you're knocked up? Think again, sweetheart." Sarah's voice was shaking now. "Vincent, please. Think about what you're saying. This is your child I'm carrying." Vincent's laugh was vicious. "My child? How do I know it's mine? You could have been sleeping around for months. Hell, you probably were. Trying to trap me with some other guy's bastard." The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Morrison's face had turned to stone. But Vincent wasn't finished. The alcohol had loosened his tongue completely, and years of resentment came pouring out. "You want to know the truth, Sarah? The truth is you were never good enough for me. You were convenient when I was nobody, when I needed someone to play house and make me look respectable. But now I'm worth $50 million, and I can have any woman I want." He gestured toward Amber, who was examining her nails with bored interest. "Amber understands success. She appreciates the finer things in life. She knows how to make a man feel like a king. You're just ordinary. Middle-class ordinary." Vincent moved closer to the camera again, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "And if you think you're going to take me to court and embarrass me, if you think you're going to try to take my money and give it to whatever bastard you're carrying, you're going to be very disappointed." The camera shook as Sarah stepped backward. "Vincent, You're scaring me. Good, he snarled, because I want you to understand something very clearly. I have the best lawyers money can buy. I have friends in city government, friends in the business community. You're nothing, Sarah, you're nobody, and if you try to fight me, I will destroy you. Amber stepped into the frame, putting her arm possessively around Vincent's waist. Baby, let's just get my stuff and go. This place is depressing. She looked directly at the camera with a cold smile. Sarah, honey, you need to face reality. Vincent has moved on. We're planning a wedding. We're looking at houses in California. The sooner you accept that and take whatever settlement he's offering, the better off you'll be. Vincent nodded, swaying slightly. Exactly. Take the $200,000 and the suburban house and disappear, because that's all you're getting. That baby might be mine, might not be, but either way, I'm not paying to raise it. I've got better things to spend my money on. The video continued for another minute, with Vincent becoming increasingly abusive and threatening. He talked about hiding assets, about having Sarah followed by private investigators, about using his connections to make sure she never worked in design again. Finally, the video ended with Vincent and Amber leaving, slamming the door behind them. The courtroom was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Judge Morrison slowly removed her glasses and cleaned them with deliberate, controlled movements. When she put them back on and looked at Vincent, her expression was one of complete disgust. "Mr. Blackstone," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "In my 20 years on this bench, I have never seen such a comprehensive display of moral bankruptcy." Vincent tried to speak, but she held up her hand. "You came into my courtroom today, claiming that you questioned the paternity of your wife's child. The video we just watched shows you clearly acknowledging that the baby might be yours, while simultaneously declaring your intention to provide no support regardless. That's not a man with genuine paternity concerns. That's a man trying to abandon his responsibilities." She leaned forward. "You also just provided this court with a detailed confession of your plans to hide assets and manipulate the legal system. You've threatened your pregnant wife, admitted to adultery, and demonstrated a level of cruelty that I find genuinely shocking." Judge Morrison's voice was growing stronger, more forceful. "But what disturbs me most, Mr. Blackstone, is your complete disregard for the well-being of an innocent child. Your child. Whether born or unborn, children deserve better than fathers who view them as financial inconveniences." Vincent finally found his voice. "Your Honor, I was drunk. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word, Mr. Blackstone. Alcohol doesn't create character. It reveals it." The judge turned to Margaret. "Ms. Chen, I'm prepared to rule on your client's requests." The judgment that destroyed Vincent's world. Judge Morrison's ruling was swift and devastating. First, regarding paternity, Mr. Blackstone will submit to a DNA test within 48 hours. Given the medical evidence of fertility planning and his own admissions in the video, I am confident the results will confirm what we already know. Second, regarding assets, I am ordering an immediate forensic accounting of all Blackstone Properties holdings, personal accounts, and investments. The threats to hide assets that we heard in the video constitute attempted fraud, and I will not allow it. Vincent was turning white. Third, regarding settlement, Mrs. Blackstone's request for 50% of marital assets is granted. The business that Mr. Blackstone built during their marriage was built with her direct contributions and support. She is entitled to her fair share. Judge Morrison's voice grew harder. Fourth, regarding child support, given Mr. Blackstone's demonstrated wealth and his attempts to avoid responsibility, I am ordering child support in the amount of $10,000 per month, plus full medical coverage and college tuition when the time comes. Furthermore, I am awarding Mrs. Blackstone full custody of the unborn child, with supervised visitation for Mr. Blackstone only if he completes anger management counseling and substance abuse treatment. Vincent was on his feet. "You can't do this. This is outrageous. Sit down, Mr. Blackstone, or I will hold you in contempt." But Judge Morrison wasn't finished. "Finally, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of possible criminal threats and witness intimidation." The behavior displayed in that video may constitute criminal conduct. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. The aftermath that no one saw coming. The fallout from Vincent's courtroom destruction was immediate and catastrophic. Within hours, news of the video had leaked to local media. Within days, it had gone viral on social media under the hashtag #Vincent Blackstone Exposed. The real estate mogul who had built his reputation on luxury and sophistication was now known as the man who had cruelly abandoned his pregnant wife and threatened her on camera. Major tenants began leaving Blackstone properties. Business partners distanced themselves. Banks began calling in loans. Amber, meanwhile, had disappeared the moment the gavel came down. She was seen at the airport that same afternoon, apparently fleeing to Los Angeles to escape the scandal. Her Instagram account went private, then disappeared entirely. But the most satisfying justice came from an unexpected source. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Sarah was settling into her new life when she received a call from her lawyer. Margaret's voice was excited. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this. We just received a call from the IRS. They've been investigating Vincent for tax evasion, and they want to talk to you about his business practices." It turned out that Vincent's threats to hide assets weren't just bluster. He'd been doing it for years, using offshore accounts and shell companies to avoid taxes. The forensic accounting ordered by the judge had uncovered a pattern of fraud that stretched back over a decade. Vincent Blackstone, the man who had called his wife nobody, ended up losing everything. His business collapsed, his assets were seized by the government, and he was facing federal charges for tax evasion and fraud. Sarah, meanwhile, used her settlement money to restart her interior design business. She specialized in helping other women rebuild their lives after divorce, creating beautiful, empowering spaces where they could start fresh. When her son was born, healthy, beautiful, and undeniably Vincent's child based on the DNA test, she named him David, after her father. Vincent had requested supervised visitation, but he was too busy dealing with federal prosecutors to follow through. The final twist that left everyone speechless. 2 years later, Sarah was thriving. Her design business was more successful than ever, her son was happy and healthy, and she'd found love again with a kind, genuine man who adored both her and her child. Vincent, by contrast, was serving a 5-year sentence in federal prison for tax evasion. His real estate empire was gone, his money was gone, and his reputation was destroyed. But the story's final twist came from an unexpected source. Sarah was cleaning out some old boxes when she found a letter that had arrived just before the divorce proceedings began. It was from a woman named Patricia Vance, Amber's mother. The letter was an apology. Mrs. Vance explained that she had only recently learned about her daughter's involvement with Vincent. She revealed that Amber had a history of targeting wealthy, married men, and that she had been worried about her daughter's behavior for years. But the bombshell was in the letter's final paragraph. "I want you to know that my daughter was recording Mr. Blackstone without his knowledge during their entire relationship. She has hours of video and audio of him discussing business deals, making threats, and bragging about his tax evasion schemes. She planned to use this material to blackmail him if their relationship ended badly. When I learned about this, I made copies of everything and sent them to the FBI. I couldn't let her destroy another family or let him get away with his crimes." Amber hadn't just abandoned Vincent when the scandal broke. She had been the one to provide the evidence that ultimately sent him to prison. The woman Vincent had trusted, the woman he had destroyed his marriage for, had been documenting his crimes the entire time. His upgrade from Sarah had actually been a downgrade to a criminal conspirator who sold him out to federal authorities. Justice, in the end, was served perfectly. Sarah's story became a testament to the power of patience, preparation, and refusing to be underestimated. Vincent had seen her as weak and naive, never imagining that the quiet woman he'd discarded was carefully building the case that would destroy him. The man who had everything, money, power, a thriving business, and what he thought was a perfect new life, lost it all because he underestimated the woman who had loved him and overestimated the woman who was using him. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just letting someone reveal who they really are and facing the consequences. What did you think of Vincent's spectacular downfall? Do you believe he got what he deserved? Let us know in the comments below. If this story of ultimate justice left you satisfied, smash that like button and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more incredible true stories of karma, justice, and the triumph of good over evil. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.